This infinite intelligence knows all I have to do is give it a clear image of what I desire, but this or something greater. See, this is the problem with The Secret and the law of attraction, a very diluted way of looking. It's not a condensed version of the true teachings. The true teachings is saying that not for selfish gain can I just create what I want. I might be able to get it, and I might be even more miserable than I was before I had it, right? That's why we say, be careful what you pray for. So it's really just about getting very clear about your intention of the relationship you want to be in, all the qualities of that person, then make sure you're a match for it. Because like attracts like, birds of a feather flock together. Water seeks its own level. Opposites do not attract.
Hi, Jana. Welcome to the Awakened Heart podcast.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you for having me.
I am so thrilled to have you on. And because I'm keeping this video portion, those ones that are listening to the podcast on a podcast player, you should see how beautiful this woman is sitting in front of me. She's absolutely gorgeous. So you'll have to check out the video portion on YouTube or Rumble to see this gorgeous woman that's sitting in front of me here. And she's coming, you're in Santa Fe right now, at your home in Santa Fe?
I am.
Yeah. And you live in the mountains up there. Now, I know you have a healing retreat up there. Is that where the healing barn is? It's Santa Fe. Is it on the same property?
Yeah, so my husband and I have 11 acres, and so our home is very separated. We live in forest, state forest land, back up to state forest land. And so the barn was actually a National Geographic photographer's studio, and we converted it. We took out the dark room and everything and converted it. It's 2,600 square foot, has a yoga studio, 3 bedrooms, two bathrooms, as an outdoor cowboy bath. It's magical. And that's where my husband Lance and I work with private clients that fly out here to work with us from all over the world. So it's been beautiful to have my own space.
It's amazing. Now, you built that out yourself and you designed it. You put all the furniture in there and you did all the spacing, because it's like I don't want to say the word wet dream, but it's my Airbnb dream. The way you designed it, like just looking at the photos on your website, it's just so soothing. I'm like, I want to stay there. I want to work with you there. But it's such a amazing, it looks like such a amazing center for somebody that's going to come and work with you and transform their lives in such a beautiful environment.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I really take a lot of joy in decorating spaces and creating beauty. And I think it really supports us to heal. You know, we are goddesses and we love beauty and we love to create beauty. And, you know, when I work with a lot of men as well, but they appreciate it. And it's a great space. Thank you so much. And yes, you're definitely welcome, Nancy. Come.
Thank you. And I did see on your site that you offer a men's semi-private retreat. And is that your husband that facilitates that?
Or so we both facilitate. Yeah, we both. It's a co-facilitation, but I really found I enjoy working with men. And all my male clients, I really build a really deep bond. I don't know if it's because I had one brother and I grew up with a brother and I was very close to him. And so, yeah, I just enjoy it. And I think men, you know, they get this message from society that, man up and don't be a sissy, and, don't, big boys don't cry. And they really need emotional healing. They need to understand emotional intelligence. And so I feel really good giving this, really specializing. And then the semi-private means, there'll be like up to 4 men can come and they stay in the healing barn together. We work with them there. And so, yeah.
And I love that you have that amongst your other programs that I've seen and your other retreats to incorporate men, because as we see in the world today, we need more men and we need them more in touch with that feminine side of themselves while still being a masculine man.
Exactly.
And there's so many pressures and confusion in the world, and to work with men, because they're the protectors of the women, they're protect, the family nucleus and how to interact. And like I said, there's so many pressures on them coming every which way. I think it's such an amazing thing to be offering them, and in essence the world and the women, because when you heal the men, you're healing the world around them and us as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, in the world that we're living in today, we need more men really advocating for women and supporting us. And yeah, and I think it takes a superior man to do that. A man
Mm-hmm.
who's willing to feel his emotions and not anesthetize them and numb them and
Mm-hmm.
find cheap externals, to satisfy them, and are willing to really dive deep. It's so
Mm-hmm.
inspiring.
Mm-hmm. And then it just thought of the way of the superior man. Isn't that David Dida? David.
Yeah, David
Mhm.
Data.
I
Yeah.
read that. I read that. I was like, oh my God, everyone needs to read. This is amazing. It's so beautiful. And that's what I
It
think
was the
about when you
first book, Nancy. I told my now husband Lance when we were dating. He said, "Do you suggest any books?" And that was the first one. I said, "I'm
yeah.
going to be with a superior man. Read this."
And he read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what is it? Did he take on a lot of what he read? Did it,
I think he was
did he think?
naturally already
Mm-hmm.
that way, but one of the things that stood out, and he shares it with our male clients, is polarity, and how in order to create that dynamic connection between the masculine and feminine, we need polarity.
Mm-hmm.
Even in homosexual relationship, you don't see, it's usually very obvious who's the female and who's the male, or, these are energies. It's really not
Mm-hmm.
about gender, it's about energy. And, because growing up, I probably was more tomboy than, very feminine. I like to climb trees and play with my brother and,
Mm-hmm.
catch frogs and do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I did too. We used to camp a lot as children. My parents were both teachers, so I was always the girly girl, but I did like getting my hands muddy and catching frogs and snakes and stuff. It's always
Yeah.
fun. But we'll circle back. I want to hear the auspicious way, if I'm saying that word right, that you met your husband, because like we were talking before I hit record, I resonate a lot with what you were talking about in the your first couple pages of your book, about how there was like this, wanting to meet your partner. Am I always going to be alone? And I'm sure a lot of my listeners, they might be in the same spot, especially people that have worked on might have trauma or worked on their, spiritual development, and have done a lot of work on themselves to find that aligned partner. And you did it. You were kind of in the same spot that I have been before, and a lot of my listeners have been. So we'll go back to that after we go into your story a little bit. You have a book coming out. I'm going to put this up just for the people that are seeing the video portion. Wise
Behind
Little
me
One.
here.
Oh, it's behind you too. Okay, well, I'll pop in on that. Wise Little One, and it's actually showing the right way. I absolutely love the way the cover design. I mean, it
Thank you.
just little cute little girl. I just love that. And it's coming out in July, and you're learning to love and listen to your inner child, because it's so important to listen to that inner child, because a lot of the ways we treat ourselves, we wouldn't treat, our little girl, and listening to our precious inner child, because there's so much wisdom with that child inside of us. And you experienced a lot of trauma and abuse in your lifetime at a very early age. And you speak about this book about, what you went through and how you overcame it. And now you're teaching the emotional healing system that's helping so many people to learn how to deal with, overcome trauma, and how to actually, elevate their lives, and
Mhm.
actually live a life that they could only dream of before. So if you could give a little bit about your background, and what some of your stories of what led you to where you are now. I mean, I know that's a lot, but we can just kind of divide it up.
Yeah, just briefly, I had there's different types of developmental trauma, and the trauma that I endured really began in utero. And I start with the first chapter is womb and how, or the second chapter. And, my mother was mentally ill. She had bipolar and borderline personality disorder. She had a lot of grief trauma. She lost her father at a young age. And she, back then in the 50s, they didn't have therapeutic models as we do today. And we just hadn't evolved to that place yet. So in the womb, the type of trauma that I endured with her being beaten and chronic depression and stress and all the hormones of stress was intense. And so what we know then is that's precognitive, right? Or pre-conscious trauma that the fetus in the womb is receiving. Now, I don't have recollection of that. And I share that story in the book based on a hypnotherapy session that I went through, where I had seen that I wrapped the cord around my neck and tried to flip myself. Now, rationally, I don't know if that's true. I received that message in hypnotherapy. I was breached and I did have the cord, and I knew that information before I had the hypnotherapy. I just didn't know I did it. But it makes sense in my training and what I learned about trauma, that even in the womb, if you had a mother or parents who were under a lot of, stress, either financial or relationship, addictions, things like this, the baby is getting fed through the umbilical cord. And so it began then for me. And it didn't really let up. As you know, if you read the book, at 8 years old, my mom put a gun to my brother in my head and said she was going to kill us. She was in a blacked out, state. We didn't know that, of course. We were children. We were taken away from her. This was probably the second time that we were, taken away from her. She had cut her wrist. In adverse childhood trauma, there's 10 questions that clinicians ask. And out of those 10 questions, I answer yes to all 10. So I had a lot of intense trauma. And as you know, at 12, I had an out-of-body experience. What precipitated that event was I was even at 12, had been reunited with my mom after the gun incident. It had only been a year or two later. And, things hadn't got any better. She kept letting my father come back. There was a lot of abuse and beatings, and police called. My dad never beat me. He beat my brother and he beat my mom. So in some ways I was protected, from all of that intense abuse, because he was the tyrant. He was the alcoholic. He was the violent one. Mom was violent, of course. Putting a gun to somebody's head is pretty violent, but she had no memory of that. And I didn't find that out until later. But at 12, I was in a situation, my brother wasn't there to protect me. And my father was beating my mother, and I was praying. One thing, the gift, I think there's always gifts in everything. I believe that we're in earth school and we're here to learn lessons. And the gift of my trauma was I had an inner resource, an inner refuge that I created through my imagination and through my connection at church to the Holy Spirit. So my parents were, they would attend church and then they would be backsliders, and attend church, in the South, this is like a thing. And so, during this time, I was very impressionable and I felt the Holy Spirit. I was very young. The first time I felt it, it was what's called slain in the spirit. I literally passed out in ecstasy, feeling overcome with so much love and bliss and joy through this connection, and knowingness that I was going to be okay, that I was a child of God, that I had all this knowingness that was before my years. I was only maybe 8 when this happened, 7 or 8. It was before the gun incident. So then when that happened, and, you know, it had kind of already set the stage, I was very close to nature and to connecting to spirit. And so when this incident happened and I was praying and wringing my hands, you know, praying to Jesus to help me. And I was all of a sudden one in the cosmos and looking around at star nebulas and just felt this peace that passes all understanding, knew that I was told, those are not your parents. I am, that is not your life. This is, and then boom, I was back in my body. But in that moment, later, I saw a documentary about near-death experiences. And in near-death experience, a woman shared she was almost drowned, almost an identical experience that I had. So then I knew, like, oh, the trauma took me into, because as a child, you don't know if you're going to die at the hands of your parents. And I'd already had a gun put to my head by my mother at that point. So when I was pulled out, it was just this deep knowingness that my soul was here for a purpose. It was an awakening, a spiritual awakening, and it set me on a course that from that point, I haven't stopped. People say, you know, well, when did you get on your spiritual path? I can never remember not being on it. I mean, one of the gifts, my mother being in these institutions, is that they would do electroconvulsive therapy. And I know that sounds strange to think that's a gift, but they actually still use it. And it is a very powerful modality to rewire the brain, neuroplasticity. But if the patient doesn't have modified change in, you know, behavior in their environment and all of that, they go right back to where they were, right? Like an addict goes to rehab, they come out. If they don't change their environment, more than likely they're going to go back in to their addiction. Well, my mom would come back and she read, you know, Edgar Casey and Raymond Moody, and she was reading about near-death experience. And I was like this impressionable child around 7s when it began, and she would just download this information. And I believe that's what set me on the path that I'm on today, that I found a lot of solace and comfort in mystical teachings. And eventually ended up, I still consider myself a Christian, but I teach Vedic teachings. I'm very kind of one creator, many paths to that creator. So I work with people from all over the world. I have clients in Saudi Arabia that are Muslim. They call me their Jaja, which I guess in Arabic means their teacher. You know, I've been able to touch a lot of people's lives because of this open awareness, I think, that happened at such a young age, that I am here for a purpose, that we are all created from this magnificent creator. And that's what helped me essentially heal. That's what helped me take responsibility for my journey and has led me to where I am here today with you.
So after that experience, and you were still in an abusive household, and after you heard that, you know, that message that those aren't your parents, I am, that isn't your life, this is, were you able to carry that to help you through the abuse and the trauma that you still experienced in your household? So you were able to be in a place of knowing that this isn't, you know, it's not about you, or that it helping you keep some peace.
I became more detached, right? I didn't entertain narratives anymore, a lot of fear. I became more detached from the experience, which really helped me navigate, get through high school, get through middle school, because that was at 12. It really helped me stay focused with a vision that I'm here for a purpose. I'm going through this because, you know, these are to make me better, these problems that I'm having, these issues. So I just, you know, when you experience an awakening that I experienced that was so profound, I cultivated inside of me a deep connection to spirit that I listened to. And that trumped my parents. I didn't have respect for them. I mean, frankly, how can you respect two people who are behaving the way they were, right? So I didn't have respect for them. But the more I cultivated a connection, an inner resource, which is what people are lacking. Existential crisis is this idea of who am I? Why am I here? I don't know, how to answer these questions. And we're seeing this globally right now. We're in a collective trauma together, right? Because people are confused about their gender, confused about we have people entertaining these narratives. I mean, this is I don't want to take your podcast in that direction, but I think
I'm totally fine to go in that direction. I do go in that direction. So we can talk about that.
Yeah, because I feel like, first of all, if childhood development, the brain's not developed till we're 25, nobody should be making decisions about anything. I mean, at least until they're 18, until they're an adult, right? So, in this crisis of connection to spirit and this obliteration of the family unit and our beliefs and our faith, and it's frightening, but I believe that it's always darkest before the dawn, that we're in this crisis collectively together. And it takes women like us that have the courage not to be afraid to be canceled, not to be afraid to speak out and say, if this is, purple, we got to call it purple. We can't pretend it's green because everybody else is saying it's green. It's kind of a silly, simple analogy, but you know what I mean.
No, I 100% understand. And, there are a lot of people speaking out against this because, like you said, like the children are malleable and they're really having these life altering, they're trying to do these life alterations surgeries to them, and they're not even grown yet. They're going to go through all these phases. Like you said, you're a little tomboy before, and then you became like a girly girl. That's part of the phases of being a child. Let them explore, let them have fun. Keep this away from the children. And unfortunately, I believe there's an agenda at work because it's going to confuse such a new generation that they're more malleable later on in life. And the thing is, like we said, let children be children. They're going to be more malleable and confused and more divided. Instead of, like you said, you connected with source and you were at one with it. I am. That's the all-encompassing thing is I am, not this, and the other thing. It's like, and then it's keeping people so divided and separated from each other and confused. And you were talking about, there is a mental disorder that is happening. And if they get the right tools to help them, maybe they had childhood trauma like you did, showing them the right tools to overcome that, have a greater acceptance of themselves instead of being put into all these little different boxes and changing who you are and later on regretting it. So we are in an existential, I'm so bad at these little names.
Existential crisis. Yeah. Like my existence. What is this about? Like in the Vedas, which is what I learned with Deepak Chopra. I trained with Deepak. I worked at the Chopra Center. And one of the things that, I learned through these teachings, which goes back 6,000 years old, the Vedic teachings, it's non-dualism. So it's saying that, we are, the reason why we suffer as humans is because we don't know who we are. We have lost connection that the Creator lives and breathes and moves through us. It's not outside of us, that it is us. And when we claim our own divinity, imagine if we were taught this from a young age, that within you is the source of all wisdom and inspiration and love. It doesn't come from mommy and daddy. It comes from within you. You have all the answers and all the connection within you, and you are divine and you are lovable. And if we got those messages, imagine what a different world we would live in. If we were teaching emotional intelligence, even self-awareness, self-management in school, things would be, obviously very different. So I think that it's important to have these difficult conversations and to talk about it and to bring light of awareness and to know. I truly believe, as one of my teachers used to say, hope is a beggar. Abandon all hope. We don't need hope right now that we're going to make it through this time. We need to be visionaries. We need to be really clear about, what does our future hold for humanity, and how can we, best give our gifts and our talents to see that happen. And I think that I feel obviously very passionate about the emotional healing system because at its core, at its foundation, it's teaching individuals to own their own divinity. I think it was Teilhard Chardin, the Jesuit priest, who said, we are not, spiritual beings having, we're not human beings having an occasional human spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, but we don't identify with our spirit. We identify with our personality, our roles, our positions. We identify with the things of the world. And as the great teacher Jesus said, and as I said, I'm open to all beliefs, but this upbringing was very strong in me. I don't believe modern Christianity a lot of times even teaches it. Have you ever been to a church where they teach you how to love yourself? But Jesus taught, love your neighbor as yourself. Right. And so be in this world, but not of it. And so that's what I think I received at 12 years old, that I was in this world. I had a purpose to be here. I had to find my unique gifts and talents and give them to the world, find the lessons from the past, right? Because the past happened, it's over, it's the prison. But if I can go back and extract the lessons, then I don't repeat them, right? And then now I can live, a more joyful life, continue to grow and evolve. So yeah, I think I answered your question.
Yeah. And going into the emotional healing techniques, self-awareness as the foundation, and you use meditation as the spiritual tool, and emotional intelligence as well. Going back to the schools, if we could bring this into the schools or have courses on it, like our younger generation, I'm really saddened to see what is happening with them. So all these beautiful techniques and what Jesus actually taught about loving the self, love each other as yourself, and the kingdom of heaven is within, because it is within us. Imagine what kind of world we would have, the next generations going forward.
Even like we have home ec. If you went to like emotional intelligence 101 and you sat in a classroom from a young age and they talked to you about core painful emotions, that, being a human, sometimes we're going to feel these feelings and they're not going to feel good. And, our puppy dies, our grandma passes away, we move, we're going to grieve and feel sorrow. People are going to be mean to us. They're going to say things that hurt us and it's going to break our heart. And these are core painful of being human. It's when we create the story that creates the suffering, like anxiety and everything. But we live in a medical system of top down, right? Not bottom up. So we don't look at root cause. Deepak used to say, we're really practicing quackery. And what he meant by that was, it is practicing medicine looking at symptoms and not root cause. And so this, kind of menticide, the killing of the mind that we've seen over the past 3 years is, rampant, because it's kind of, that term mass psychosis, because people do not have, they're ignorant. And not to say that in a mean way, it just means they don't have the knowledge of emotional intelligence. They don't know that they don't know, and it's kind of like, how can we be angry at someone who doesn't know? But once you understand that your feeling self is a child. Why? Because when you were under the age of 7, you were all feeling. Anything that happened, you processed it through your feeling self, not through your intellect. Why? Because it's not developed yet. It's not fully developed till we're 25. So everything that's happening is feeling. So we're going back to what we were talking about before, and about children making these big life-changing decisions about their gender and, whatever it is. It breaks my heart, because there's a child in there that doesn't know, right? And then there's adults that are walking around in adult bodies that are really wounded children, because of course they were raised and conditioned by their wounded parents, and it just keeps perpetuating the cycle. So this work that I teach, the foundation being spirituality, it's psycho-spirituality. So it's like combining the best of psychology, psychosynthesis, shadow work, reparenting, inner child work, all of that with spirituality, foundation of meditation, connection to spiritual guidance, knowing that you are here for a purpose, and that the core you, that little girl or little boy inside of you, only wants to give their best unique gifts and talents. But we've covered it all up. It's like the story of that Buddha they found in Indonesia. It was covered with, he was gold, but then a crack came through and you could see it was mud, or it was all, he was gold, but he was covered in mud, and a crack was in it, and they saw the gold. And then they found out during the, one of the like Mongolian, occupations during that area, they covered the Buddha with mud so they wouldn't break it apart for the gold. So it's kind of like what we've done. We have mistaken identity. We've covered ourselves up with all these ideas of who we are. And, we don't realize that we're these innocent children that are just wanting to have a happy childhood and have a happy life.
Mm-hmm. And that leads me to the inner child and the child inside of us. And you had another mystical experience when you went to a retreat in Esalen. You told me the name of it, Esalen,
Yeah,
right?
Esalen.
Is that in Esalen? And you were having this amazing retreat, one that you always wanted to go to, in this blissful environment. And you heard that pull. You felt that pull again, and you heard the voice again asking you to leave. Like you had already created a successful emotional healing system. You've had, you've done a lot of work with some of the biggest visionaries of our time, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Debbie Ford, and you were wanting your beloved. You were wanting to, am I always going to be alone? Feeling that pull. And I said, we have the same similarity where we've both done all this work, and that's just that one thing missing. Am I always going to be alone? And, you were feeling that up at the retreat, and then you're having this blissful time, and you heard that, and then you felt that pull. Can you tell the audience a little bit of that story? And then maybe, that's going to fast forward it. I think they have to be surprised, maybe about how you met your husband. I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah. So a lifetime of listening, right? Learning to listen from the time I was very young, but especially at 12, I began to listen to what most people would call their intuition. To me, that is your feeling self, AKA your inner child. So I began to hear, the voice of my inner child a lot, that guided me, the voice of wisdom that guided me to what was in my highest good and what wasn't, whether it was relationship with girlfriends, with partners, whatever. But I'd been married 18 years, and we had a very successful relationship that, for business partnership, he helped me raise my daughter, but I wasn't in love. And I knew after working for over a decade at that point that I had to live in integrity. I kind of had some imposter syndrome, right? Because here I am teaching women to believe in themselves, to love themselves, to, if that's their heart's desire, to create the partner, their beloved. And I was in a relationship with someone who I didn't respect. So then, of course, I didn't respect myself, because we are in the mirror of relationship. So everything's mirroring us back to us. So he was irresponsible. All the things that he was, I had to start to do shadow work, which is what I trained with Debbie Ford in, and really look at what I had disowned and denied in myself, and then begin to own it and embrace it so I could heal it and not stay in this marriage and have the strength, because I was being a caretaker. I had put his feelings above my own. I was afraid, frankly, of going out on my own. But finally, when I did, it was a huge liberating time in my life. I was 47 years old. And so by the time I met my beloved, I'm at this retreat that you're talking about. It was a meditation retreat. And I had been single now for a couple of years, about 2.5 years. I dated one person during that time. I really knew I needed to take time to work on me, on what I had hid out maybe in those 18 years of that marriage and didn't really look at. I still had work to do. We always do. I've had many teachers who showed up, Nancy, and they pretend they've arrived, and then I got close to them and realized, oh, no, they haven't arrived. Nobody's arrived. If we're still in this body, in this incarnation, we still have work to do, I believe. So I would just ask little Jana, what do you want to do? And I just, anything that made my heart sing, kind of like that Maria Kondo, what sparks joy? So what sparks joy for little Jana is lots of yoga and hiking and adventures and meditation retreats and just going deeper, right? Connecting to spirit. So I booked this retreat and I'm there, and on day 3 of any of the retreats at Esalen, they give you a half day off. Well, I had kept hearing this voice. We're meditating 6 hours a day. So I'm gone most of the day, right? Like when you're sitting in a silent meditation retreat like this, especially with advanced meditators, you're gone. Like people are like, how can you sit for 6 hours? It's really not that hard. You're not aware, right? You're not asleep, but you're gone. So I'm having mystical experiences in this with an amazing teacher by the name of Sally Kempton. If any of the listeners haven't heard of her, I highly suggest you look for her. She's a wonderful meditation teacher. She lived many years in India, and she was the head of Esquire magazine in New York City. And she had a spiritual experience, and it sent her on a different journey. She lives in Carmel, California. And so I'm with her and I'm happy. But every time I'd come out of the meditation, I'd hear one word: leave. And I fought it and I fought it. But really what was going on, there was a couple of things happening. In the heart math research, and I'm a heart math facilitator, they found that the body begins to pick up things in the field around us about 20 seconds before they happen. Now, research shows sometimes it can go back even as far as a few weeks. So now I'm being called to come to this retreat, to this place and time. Right before I leave to go to the retreat, I get a notice from my ex, and he hadn't paid some capital gain taxes from the IRS. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I shouldn't go on this retreat. I owe all this money. I should just cancel it. It was like everything was testing me, right? I end up going on the retreat. I trust. I get there. There's a lot of nudity. Now, Esalen is a bathing suit optional for their baths, and they're known for these beautiful, lovely hot baths. And I had sexual abuse as a child. I'm not comfortable with public nudity. I'm not comfortable with nudity with strangers, period. Women may be in a locker room, but even then I'm just not comfortable with it. And I'm not judging anyone who is. It's just, for me, it felt like a exploitation of the abuse that I had when I was younger. So I thought maybe that's why I keep hearing leave. Maybe it's little Jana telling me, I like it here, let's leave. But I fought it. And then I started getting sick, and I got achy and sore, and I felt like I was coming down with something. And finally I just threw in the towel and kind of abruptly left a session, made a scene, got in my car. Within 10 minutes, all the symptoms were gone. Nancy, I didn't feel the sickness, the achy, the inflammation anymore, the low grade, like kind of sickness, like I was getting the flu. So I just started communicating, what do you want to do now? And she's like, let's go hug a tree. Yeah, I'm one of those. I'm a tree hugger. So we go to the forest and these big redwoods, and I sit and I cry next to this old pioneer trees, like 2,500 years old, and sitting there, and I'm just, when am I ever going to meet my beloved? I don't want to do this journey alone. I'm kind of terrorizing myself, right? I'm about to turn 50 in a few months. I feel afraid of being alone. And then in that moment, I think the hours of meditation, I heard how I was terrorizing little Jana. I was making her scared. I was abandoning her. I was making her feel like, the worst case scenario is going to happen. And that's what we do. It's a survival mechanism, right? We look, and our focus gets very convergent. We get like, okay, I've got a plan for the worst to make sure it doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden I heard spirit, I've got your back. Like, you're clear about the partner you want. Just listen to me. Keep listening to little Jana, loving her, and just have fun. And that was the message I had. So I go to Carmel. I love Carmel. It's like Hansel and Gretel, quintessential, beautiful little town, forest meets ocean. And I go to this restaurant, and I have the most profound experience of my life. Even as profound as the experience at 12 when I was pulled out of my body. I began to see little Jana sitting across the table from me. I was looking around at all these couples, and I started to entertain the narrative again. Oh, I'm always going to be alone. You know, when's it going to happen for me? Everybody, what does she have that I don't? Comparing myself. And all of a sudden it was like, I could see my 5-year-old self sitting in front of me. And then the craziest thing happened. It was like I went into her body, and you know how in path and near-death experiences, or when people talk about it, they see a flash of their life. That's what happened. It was like nobody knows me better than my little self, right? She's been with me my whole time. It was like I could see every experience, and she showed me all I had endured, all I had overcome. It was, there's a Rumi poem, and I quoted in my book, by God, when you see the beauty of yourself, you'll fall down in awe. And I just saw, like, I'd overcame a lot to end up at almost 50 years old in a time of my life when I was successful. I didn't need a man. I wanted my partner, but I was in awe of myself. It makes me emotional even talking about it, because there's no greater love when you can see your innocence and your goodness and your lovability, when you really know how deserving you are, that it is your birthright to be happy, to be loved, but it's you that has to give it to you. It doesn't come from the outer world. Then it's exciting, because you're like, okay, it's just up to me. I can control this. I don't have to give myself away to anyone. So I have this experience that's so profound. And the next morning I decide I must have been guided to leave that retreat for a reason. And when I was a young mother, a single mom, I raised my daughter the first 7 years alone. I was in a yoga class, and they read Richard Bach's book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And they read an excerpt out of it, and I'd never heard of this book. So I grabbed it. It was a tiny little book, went to the beach, read it in, just a couple hours. And the seagull, it was this parable about going to your next level and how you never stop growing, right? And seagulls became kind of medicine for me. In native and indigenous cultures, they look at birds and animals and even insects and things as giving you medicine. And so that became my medicine totem, was the seagull, because anytime I saw a seagull kind of out of the blue, I saw it as a sign that I was getting ready to go to my next level. Well, that morning I'm packing my bags to go to the airport to come back home, because frankly, I wasn't going to stay in a hotel and pay all that money after I'd left my retreat. I figured, well, it's time to come home. Jonathan the seagull shows up, and I put a picture of that seagull that I took with my iPhone in my book. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, something is magical about to happen. I think I was supposed to leave that retreat, and got really excited. Looked on my computer. There was all kinds of flights leaving San Jose, California to Albuquerque is where I had to fly into. And I found one. Yep, there's a picture of Jonathan. And I found a flight on a Southwest. Of course, I was flying out on American on Saturday, but here it is Wednesday. I'm not flying American. I just had to book a flight, and I find a one-way on Southwest, and I go through Vegas because, of course, Vegas was special. My parents lived in Vegas. I was conceived in Las Vegas. And so great people watching, right? So I go through Vegas, and on that connection, you choose your seat. I sat next to my husband.
Oh my God.
On a plane I was not supposed to be on, because I listened to that little girl. I listened to my emotions. I honor my emotions. When I say learning to love and listen to your inner child, essentially what we're saying is learning to love and listen to my feelings.
and tapping into that, the feelings and intelligence, getting out of the head and tapping into that. You listened to that, and you followed it, and you were led to your beloved. Like, how many times I'd love to sit on an airplane and sit next to my person. Maybe
And
that'll
I was
happen.
different, that night before that experience with my inner child, I felt whole and complete, unlike I had
Mm,
ever felt, Nancy. I was like, I'm good. Like,
mhm,
there was this knowingness. Like I always say, you don't believe you can ride a bike, you can. I didn't believe I would meet somebody. I didn't believe I was going to be okay. I knew it.
mhm,
And that
mm,
knowingness was a confidence that exuded from me. It was like palpable to be in my presence. I had arrived. There was no place to go anymore. I was like, oh, I am fully in my skin. I am comfortable.
mhm,
I know who I am. So the old Jana may have been hooking into him. He was handsome, chatty, none of that. I was
mhm,
just fully complete within myself.
mhm,
There was a lady sitting next to me. She needed some help with her seatbelt. I helped her without saying anything. Sat down. I had earphones on. I'm in bliss, listening to spiritual music, and he's napping over there. And I'm kind of checking him out. He was reading a book about happiness. I said, "Oh, poor guy, he needs to read a book about being happy." I thought maybe he lost money in Las Vegas because
mhm,
he was in the Las Vegas flight. I didn't know if he had connected or anything. And, we create stories about people. We don't know if it's true or not. And then about halfway into the flight, it's a short flight, he begins chatting and talking to me. My first interview question that I had for men, if I went on dates, was, do you meditate? Because to
mhm,
me, there's nothing more important than spiritual practice. And I
mhm,
obviously want to be with somebody like-minded and same spiritual altitude. And so the rest was history. About not even a week later, we went on a date. We both left that night knowing, again, not
mm.
believing, knowing. He knew it, I knew it. And it was just a matter of time. And almost 2 years to the date we met on that plane, we married.
Mm. And that just leads to how the saying is, like, you get right, there's no greater love than yourself. And once you experience that and you're okay, like, boom, the stars open, like the skies open, and the stars align, and you were both, met each other at the right time, because obviously he said yes, he meditates, and he had his own big spiritual practice. And if you guys had met, any time earlier, it just wouldn't have worked. But you were totally led to each other. And I love that story. That's giving me hope in my heart, because I've been single much, much longer. It's like been, I think, 8 solid years. It's like, what the hell is going on in my life? But obviously I have to, whatever I have to experience in my life right now
Nancy, you
is.
got to get really clear. So one of the
Mhm,
things I share in the book, because this is a prescriptive memoir, which means I am giving subtle prescriptions of how that are in the emotional healing system on how to manifest and create and heal. And one of those, it doesn't happen until the very end. So at the very end, I give you what's called a desire statement. So in
mhm,
the old paradigm, we used affirmations, right? Like to affirm something that we desire. I'm in a loving, committed, healthy relationship with a partner. Now, if we're not in a loving, committed, healthy relationship with a partner and we're affirming we are, there's that wounded part of us that's like, who are you kidding? You're lying. Like, and that now we're offering up resistance to that which we say we desire. We don't believe it, right? There's a part of us that doesn't believe it. Then we're offering up doubt. And if we are, it's like what you resist persists. We're like pushing up the entire universe. So think about when you go to a restaurant and you order food, you don't go run back into ask the chef constantly, are you preparing it right? Are you doing it? When's it going to be done? You trust, right? You
mhm,
detach. So when we're not clear that we are the creator, we were talking about who am I? We are the leading lady of our movie called Life. This is it. We
mhm,
are the leading lady. We're the one who chooses the people who are in our movie, the cinematography. Where's it going to happen? I mean, when I created Living Off the Grid, this was a part of my movie. This was a part of when I wanted to create it. But I had to get really clear about my leading man. So I teach this method. This is from one of the part of the system in the tools, but this actually is a method that I learned from a training that I did with Law of Attraction School. Michael Logier wrote a book, and it was based kind of on the Abraham teachings, Abraham Hicks, and it's how to get really clear about what you want. A lot of people don't believe they know what they want in a partner, in life, and career, and whatever. You do, because you know what you don't want. So if you make a list, my ideal partner, for me, it was my ideal masculine partner. On the left column, I put what I don't want. Well, I didn't want an alcoholic. I didn't want, a cheater. I'm very clear what I didn't want, right? I didn't want somebody who's a materialist, not spiritual, someone who's angry, all the list. Well, what do I want? And you go to the opposite. Oh, I want someone who's healthy, who's fit, who's spiritual, who's conscious, who wants to make a difference in the world, who, adores me, who treats me like a goddess, who. Then you take that do want list and you create a desire statement. And I give the example of the desire statement that I created for my ideal partner. And I can share that with you if you wanted to share it with your listeners. And it's very detailed. It's in everything. When I gave it to Lance, my husband, and I said, I want you to read this. This is the qualities of the man I wanted to attract. Who does it sound like? He's very humble. And so he was blushing as he's reading it. And I even put the age, Nancy. I was 49 and I wanted to attract somebody 5 years younger or 5 years older. That was somewhere in that bracket. Well, he was 5.5 years younger. So he missed it by 6 months, he said. I said, that's okay. I'll take 6 months younger.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you just get really clear about what you want, and then you order it. It's your order to the universe. You don't, every time the mind goes, oh, what if it's not going to happen? You just create images with elevated emotion, with so much gratitude. It's done. It's already happened. If it's in your highest good to be with your beloved, to bring your gifts forth in the world, to be your best self, there's no way it's not going to happen.
So how is that with, yes, you set your intention. Now, how much is that with divine timing and surrendering? Because there's this whole thing with the law of attraction. If you want a Corvette, you picture it and you feel it and it's yours. But then there's also, well, with relationships, how much is surrendering and divine timing and putting in your order for
that's a
what you
good
want?
question. So in the teachings in Vedanta, it teaches, and this is what I learned with Deepak in his book, 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. So there is no law of attraction. It's the law of intention and desire, and the law of least effort. So when you apply, and the law of detachment, those 3 universal laws are imperative. So in the law of intention and desire, it says your attention is your most valuable asset. There's nothing more valuable that we have than what we're placing our attention on. So that's why we meditate, so we have awareness. Where's my attention? Because if you're in stinking thinking, or you're listening to the itty bitty shitty committee, which a friend of mine calls her critic, her inner critic, right? Then your attention's being squandered. So you get really masterful at placing your attention in the present moment, because this is all that exists, and this is how we're creating our future. So when your attention is here, you can be very intentional about the future. So the law of intention says intentions have infinite organizing power, because there's an infinite intelligent universe that we're living in, that we call the source, God, the creator, that created it all. We're not separate from it. It lives, moves, breathes for us. I mean, think about breath. Are you breathing, or are you being breathed? Right? You're usually just being breathed. What's breathing you is this intelligence, and it lives in us. So when you start to claim your own divinity, who you are as a creator, and if that is absolutely in your highest good, then you detach from it. Like I gave the example of the restaurant. You place an order and you detach, because be careful what you pray for. You might get it. So you've got to be clear that this infinite intelligence that created you and me and everything that is 14.8 billion years ago, if you accept the Big Bang Theory, then you say, okay, this infinite intelligence knows all I have to do is give it a clear image of what I desire, but this or something greater. See, this is the problem with The Secret and the law of attraction, a very diluted way of looking. It's not a condensed version of the true teachings. The true teachings is saying that not for selfish gain can I just create what I want. I might be able to get it, and I might be even more miserable than I was before I had it, right? That's why we say, be careful what you pray for. So it's really just about getting very clear about your intention of the relationship you want to be in, all the qualities of that person, then make sure you're a match for it. Because like attracts like, birds of a feather flock together. Water seeks its own level. Opposites do not attract, right? So if we're talking about using this model to attract your beloved, you've got to attract you. That's all you're attracting. When I attracted Lance, I essentially attracted the highest qualities that I aspire to be, right, in him. And then so I think, holding an image with elevated emotion of what you desire, Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge can only take you so far. Your imagination is unlimited. So if you're using the power, and guess what part of us loves our imagination?
Our little child.
Our inner child.
Yes.
So we feed it. We show her images of a beloved kissing us, of adventures, if it's more fun and leisure you want in your life, of driving a reliable car that you feel really successful and good in. If all of that is in your highest good, as I said before, it doesn't take work. It's subtle. It's just dropping like a little pebble in a pond, and it ripples, and trusting that it's going to come back to you, right? Your work is to stay in a high frequency, to keep yourself coherent, to keep, in heart math, we teach heart coherence, breathing slow and deep through the heart. Really, the heart sends a lot more ascending fibers or messages to the brain than the brain does to the heart. So when we're heart-centered and we're imagining our ideal future, whatever it is, we fill our heart up with gratitude, appreciation in advance of receiving what we desire. But we must always end it, this or something greater, because you might be asking for something that's not in your highest good.
And that's where the surrendering comes. You're creating the image, you're going essentially into the quantum. That imagination and that intention creates the image that goes out into the field that we're resonating outwards. But then I like that, because the surrendering is this or something greater, because you're not just like you said, what if you get what you're intent picturing, but it's not in your highest good.
So when people say, will you pray for so-and-so? And I say, yes, of course, but my prayer is very different. My prayer is for the highest good for that soul. And listen, working at the Chopra Center, being around a lot of thought leaders, and even Wayne Dyer, he passed away from leukemia. Debbie Ford passed away from stomach cancer. Dr. David Simon, Deepak Chopra's partner at the Chopra Center, who I worked under and studied under, died of a brain tumor. Okay, all of them, that was the greatest gift of their life. It woke them up. Now, had I prayed for healing for them, maybe it wasn't their highest good to continue to live. We have a phobia of death in the West, like, oh, death, listen, death is the next great adventure, right? So we embrace these things and we ask for the highest good. We admit that we don't know what that is, even for ourselves. It's kind of like, to use old Christian language, it's thy will be done.
I use that.
right?
I
So
wrote
it's a
it down.
building of faith. It's saying, this is what I want. I'm sending you. I'm making no mistake of my order, but I'm trusting you've got my back. Universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, unified field. You've got my back. You're working it out. You're working the details. All I have to do now is mind my frequency, keep myself in gratitude, appreciation, keep myself focused, my attention in this present moment, enjoying life, and the rest will be taken care of.
So we're going to wrap this up in a moment, just one or two more questions. So in a busy world, like people are feeling all these pressures and, like, healing their trauma or their families or whatnot, to be able to go back into that higher frequency, to drop back into that, do you have a few simple steps that you can share with our listeners today to get them maybe into, they're not feeling in that high frequency state, to just get them feeling a little more into that higher vibe state? Maybe things haven't manifested the way as fast as they wanted it to, or they're re-experiencing some trauma that they might have had, or some, in their early childhood, or something that happened during the day, just to drop themselves back into that spot where they can maybe get back into that creation state. I
Yeah.
don't know if I.
So the word soma it means body.
Mm,
It's from Latin, right? So
mhm,
somatic practices, our emotions live in our body, not in our head. You said that earlier, like get you out
mhm,
of your head and in your body. So when we're under the gun of stress and we are feeling the autonomic nervous system is knocked out of balance, we're in sympathetic, which is the gas pedal. We're telling ourselves just through thought alone, a worst case scenario, like me in the restaurant, I'm never going to meet anybody. That was
mhm.
putting my body in stress. My body was getting a signal that, oh, something bad's about to happen,
Fight or
right?
flight. Yep. Mhm,
Exactly. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So freeze
mhm,
fawn is also a very important, because they're also, when you're freezing and fawning, you're also in stress. You just look calm. You're not fighting or running. You're just, freezing or fawning. Fawning means like being nice and kind, because you're in survival. You got to figure out the best way to get out, and take care of yourself. So when we're aware, and again, meditation is the most important practice, because if you don't have awareness, self-reflecting awareness, you're not going to be aware when you're in stress response. You're going to be
mhm.
in the forest and can't see the trees, right? You're going to be lost in it. But somatic practices help us shift. So one good one, I love horses. I had a horse growing up, Billy. And so what do horses do when they alleviate stress?
Mhm.
I mean, the little child inside you loves to do this too, just, shake, move around,
Mhm.
give yourself a hug, hugging yourself, like really just, I know you're going through a lot, befriending yourself, being kind to yourself, dancing. The
Mhm.
inner child loves to dance, right? Being silly. Um, there's yawning, that's a way we relieve stress. So first you have to get yourself into a coherent state. And that's what we're talking about. So heart math, placing the hand on the heart, breathing slow and deep at about 4 seconds in and out, not holding the breath, thinking of things that you appreciate, places you've been that bring you comfort, that this is a great way. Because if you're incoherent, your cognition is altered. You can't think clearly. And so you'll keep running those loops of the trauma, the past trauma, the stress, the worst case scenario. You can't be present. And so in order to, really live a beautiful life, we got to be present for it, right? We can't be, lost on our phones all the time, not present for ourselves, for others. So it really requires presence. So there's little hacks, like body hacks, that you can do. The horse breathing, like I shared, slow and deep breathing into the heart, dancing, yawning, hugging yourself. Look up somatic practices for anyone who's listening that could help you move the dense energy of anxiety, of guilt, of shame, of fear, that the hormones of stress are creating. The cortisol floods you and you can't think clear.
Mhm. I'll put some of those in the show notes for sure for people some of the listeners to look up. And I'd also love to know where people can find you to work with you. There's just so much, you've got so many amazing programs that you facilitate for men with your husband, and then your retreats and your one-on-ones, and just your wealth of knowledge that you've learned throughout your own experiences and through some of these great visionary teachers. I love the heart math. It's so fascinating. Becoming supernatural really changed my life. So that's where I first learned about the Heart Math Institute. And Joe Dispenza is a really big proponent of the work, and it's just amazing and provable. And Deepak Chopra, you were talking earlier, and I just thought about the intention and the imagination, and I just thought about the particle wave, how it doesn't become anything until you observe it.
Right.
And I mean, there's so much more to that, but it's so fascinating. It could be whatever, and then it doesn't become anything till you observe it. It's so amazing. But how can people connect with you and maybe work with you, and where to find your book when it becomes available?
Yeah, so the book will be out in July. We have it set for July 12th, which is my grandson's birthday. He turned 7.
Mhm.
I have one grandson. He's definitely that
Oh.
with my eye, Grayson.
Oh.
And janawilson.com, you can find sign up to get, you can pre-order the book there, and you can also get autographed copies of hardcover or paperbacks of the book there. The book will be everywhere. It's going to be on Amazon, and it'll be Barnes and Noble. It's going to be worldwide distribution. So they'll be able to find the book anywhere. But if you would like to be involved, any listeners in the book launch, please go to Jana Wilson, sign up. Then you'll get an email, and we'll include you in the invitation for the book launch on July 12th. And it'll be a Zoom celebration. The retreats, the private retreat, I'm booked until next year. So the work that I'm offering is very unique. So it's one-on-one. They stay here, they're in residence while they're here. Everything is taken care of. So food, lodging, all professional fees. I work with other healers that come in also. We do equine therapy. So we have different modalities. It's really an experience. Some people are coming from Europe, from the Middle East, from Canada, from all over the US, and they've never been to Santa Fe. Often they'll say, "Isn't it desert? Is it hot?" I'm like, "No, we're at 7,400 altitude." It is ski valley. It's cold today. It's still kind of making its mind up. It doesn't want to be spring so it's a beautiful place. I had a shaman tell me that the healing barn, that the spirits of this land are really grateful that we're doing such deep healing work here. We include breath work, lots of different modalities, some that really unlock the full potential for somebody. But that work it's very hard to get into. It's very costly because you're spending time with me and my husband, who's a physician, 6 to 8 hours a day. So it's intensive. It's pouring in, 30 plus years or lifetime of wisdom into someone. So it's a lot of experiential and educational. The group retreat is what we want to really build. It's the same content as a private. It's the next book that's coming out, the Emotional Healing System book that'll be coming out next year. My husband and I are co-authoring it. And the group retreats are really powerful. I've been doing them for 19 years. 2004, I launched the first one. They're 5 days. The next one is September the 3rd through the 8th in Florida. And information is at emotionalhealingretreats.com. They can find, any listener, anybody who is interested could find. It's open enrollment. And as soon as someone enrolls, they get their meditation mantra. They learn how to meditate. We give them a list of books and documentaries. Joe Dispenza is definitely a part of that. Joe's been a very influential part of my journey since 2003, when What the Bleep came out. I know him personally. And so, yeah, I think this system is just, I really searched for the most important integral pieces of someone. If they can take this and adopt all these tools, from meditation to reparenting to envisioning to shadow work, and really understand it, it is a spiritual toolbox. They'll never need a therapist again. They've got it, right? I really wanted to teach someone to fish, right? Not hand them the fish.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So that's what we've got happening.
Okay, great. And September 3rd through the 8th. Gonna have to go check that out. This will be out. I think this is going to be out in end of May or early June, so people have plenty of time to seek out all your programs and maybe sign up for this amazing retreat. How many people are you taking? How many people are you taking into this 5-day retreat?
There'll probably be, 50 people.
Okay.
Probably. I mean, we don't like them to get too large,
right?
Because then, but we have assistants, people who have trained with Lance and I, and so they get almost like a mini retreat, because we assign, if we have 50 people, we'd have 5 assistants. Every 10 people are assigned to an assistant who checks in with them and supports them and helps them. And so, yeah, it's, we still want to keep the intimacy, but we want to reach more people, of course.
And what is lighting you up right now? I mean, of course, this event that you have, your healing barn and your personal clients that you coach, and then this new retreat. But what is really lighting you up in your life right now?
My baby.
Oh yes, that's right. That's her baby. I love it.
I'm giving birth to this. I mean,
she's giving birth to her wise little one, her first book that's coming out. And I've started reading, you see from my bookmarks, and I'm just drawn in. So this is my bedtime reading tonight. It's a beautiful book. It's so well written. It's so heart-wrenching in so many areas. And you wrote so beautifully in here. And then there's so many tools in here that you can start integrating into your own life right away, which I've already highlighted and taken into my own heart. But I wanted to thank you for coming on the podcast. It's so nice to meet you. I have one last question that I ask all my guests. I always ask this, and I wanted to hear from you what it means for you to live with an awakened heart.
Within an awakened heart is to, relate with myself as little Jana.
There you go. Living as little Jana, living as your wise little one that is inside all of us. Well, Jana, thank you so much for being on the Awakened Heart podcast.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Bye, Nancy.
Thanks. Bye.